Among all the insects on Earth, one is met not with disgust, but with tenderness. A child lets it walk across a fingertip and makes a quiet wish. Yet almost everything you believe about this tiny beetle is a lie. Its red is not beauty, its spots are not decoration, and harmless is wrong. Here on Wild Planet TV, we go where the familiar stops being what it seems. So subscribe now before this gentle insect becomes something else entirely, because you will see why it bleeds poison, why its young eat each other, and how it saved an industry. We fear wasps, we swat flies, and cockroaches make our skin crawl instantly. We back away from spiders, but this one beetle we willingly place on our palm. We lift it toward the sky and patiently wait for it to open its wings. Almost no other insect on Earth is welcomed with such easy, instinctive warmth. Gardeners actually smile when they spot it working among the roses. Children paint it on cards, and cultures everywhere call it a small sign of luck. But behind all that affection sits a question almost nobody ever thinks to ask. Why this one? Why is it the single insect the whole world agrees to adore? What exactly does this creature hide behind such a soft and friendly face? The answer begins with the very thing we find most charming, its color. Bright red, scattered with black dots, and to us it simply looks pretty. To a hungry predator, that same pattern reads as something entirely different.
To them, the red is not an invitation at all, it is a warning. In biology, this has a precise name. It is called aposematicism. Warning coloration, a bright, deliberate sign that screams one message: do not touch. Wasps wear yellow and black, poison frogs blaze in neon, all saying danger. The ladybug uses red and black dots, running on the exact same logic. Only we, the humans, keep mistaking that ancient warning for simple beauty. And make no mistake, this is not an empty or bluffing threat. When a bird or a lizard actually seizes one, something strange happens fast. From the joints of its legs, a thick liquid suddenly wells up. It is bright yellow, bitter, and toxic, and it is called reflex bleeding. This is hemolymph, loaded with alkaloids, corrosive, foul-tasting, and hard to forget. For a small predator, a single taste is enough to remember it forever. A bird that tries a ladybug once will almost never touch another. The red burns itself into memory as one unmistakable word: danger. This beetle bleeds poison from its own knees, and it does so on purpose. And the number of spots, by the way, has nothing to do with age. That is one of the most stubborn and widely repeated myths about it. The number of spots is decided by the species, not by the years lived. The 7-spot ladybug is by far the most common one across Europe. The 2-spot ladybug is not older or younger, it is a different species. Some ladybugs carry no spots at all, and some wear bold stripes instead. Some are black with red dots, the entire warning pattern simply flipped around. There are around 6,000 species, 6,000 variations of the same warning. Now watch what this gentle-looking little beetle actually does out in the world. Every single day, without pause, without hesitation, without a shred of mercy, it kills, and it kills a great deal, methodically and without stopping. But there is a hunter in this story even deadlier than the adult, and you would honestly never guess what that hunter later becomes. Hold on to that thought, because number 5 will make it darker still. Meet the aphid. Small, soft-bodied, painfully slow, and almost completely defenseless. It sucks the sap straight from plants and barely bothers to move. It does not fight back, and it does not even try to flee. But what it does do is breed at a genuinely terrifying speed. A single female can flood an entire plant without ever once mating. Through parthenogenesis, she produces generation after generation in one short summer. A single aphid colony can quietly destroy a whole crop within weeks. So the ladybug is not merely a predator, it is a living controller. A healthy adult can eat around 50 aphids in a single day. Over the course of its life, that adds up to several thousand. These are not rough guesses. They come from careful laboratory counts. The method it uses is almost insultingly simple and completely brutal. It finds a colony sitting on a leaf, and then it begins. One aphid after another,
never choosing, never slowing, never truly stopping. The aphids are far too slow to run, and they do not even try. It moves straight through the colony like a patient, tireless machine. From the aphid's point of view, this is not hunting, it is a cleansing. One ladybug can rescue a plant that an entire colony was slowly killing. This is exactly why gardeners so quietly and gratefully worship it. But the adult, remarkably, is not even the family's most efficient killer. That grim title belongs to something that looks nothing like it at all, something dark, spined, alien, and far hungrier than you would ever expect. If you saw it in your garden, you would instantly call it a pest, and you would be one single heartbeat away from a terrible mistake. The larva of the ladybug looks unnervingly like a tiny crocodile, an elongated dark body, rows of spines along its sides, and 6 legs. Most people, seeing it, mistake it for something to be crushed on sight, and the irony of that reaction is genuinely, painfully cruel, because this little monster is an even greater killer of aphids than its parent. In just 2 or 3 weeks, one larva devours 300 to 400. It cannot fly, so it wastes no precious energy on traveling anywhere. It simply crawls the stem and eats absolutely everything that moves. It looks nothing at all like the pretty beetle it is about to become. A dark little predator built for one purpose only, to grow and to feed.
So the gardener who crushes it is unknowingly destroying a powerful ally, an ally that in its final week could have eaten 200 more aphids. Then, when the feeding is finally done, comes the pupa. It hangs from the underside of a leaf, motionless and completely defenseless. Inside that still shell, the body dissolves and rebuilds itself completely, much like a butterfly, though what emerges here is no butterfly. A few days later, a beetle slowly pushes its way out of the shell, but it is not red yet, not even close, and not for hours. The newborn is pale yellow, almost orange, and carries no pattern at all. The spots and the final color only arrive during those first fragile hours. As the shell hardens, the beetle develops in front of you like a photograph. Red bleeds slowly in, the black dots surface, and the warning is printed. And with that, the adorable little killer is finally fully complete. But nothing you have seen so far prepares you for what the mothers do. Here is the part that the cheerful children's books quietly leave out. Ladybugs are cannibals, not rarely, not only in crisis, regularly. The mother lays her eggs in tight clusters on the surface of a leaf, usually somewhere between 10 and 50 eggs in a single batch. But some of those eggs are deliberately infertile, and that is no accident. They are a reserve, a first meal, carefully prepared well in advance. Because when the very first larvae hatch, they are already starving.
And the nearest food available is the cluster of eggs right beside them. In its first minutes of life, a larva eats its own unborn siblings. The mother left behind a starter ration made from her own children. And if food later runs short, the surviving larvae turn on each other. The larger one simply attacks and consumes the smaller one beside it. The larva that hatched first and ate the most eggs usually wins. This is not random cruelty at all. It is cold, built-in strategy. In a hungry year, 3 strong survivors beat 20 weak, doomed ones. If this is rewiring how you see them, comment the single word balance. Trust me, that one word is going to matter by the end of this video. Adult ladybugs eat eggs too, their own eggs and the eggs of others. They do not distinguish or hesitate. A clutch found is a clutch eaten. Cannibalism among ladybugs is not an emergency, it is simply normal. The mother places dead eggs beside the living ones fully deliberately, so the newborns have something to eat the very moment they wake up. It is a cold calculation worked out in advance and not a failure. And this ruthless little killer once saved an entire American industry. To ask what ladybugs are really for, travel back to the year 1888, California and its citrus industry, the beating heart of the state's economy. And that entire industry was quietly, steadily dying on the branch. The cause was the cottony cushion scale, newly arrived from Australia. A tiny insect that had slipped in on a batch of imported seedlings. It sucked the very life out of the citrus trees, one branch at a time. The available chemicals failed, and the trees died by the thousands. Farmers who had staked everything on citrus were being completely ruined. Then one entomologist stood up and proposed something genuinely radical. His name was Charles Valentine Riley, and he had a strange idea: find the pest's natural enemy in its homeland and bring it here. So they sent a man named Albert Cobale all the way to Australia. There he found a small red beetle known as the Vidalia. In Australia, this beetle quietly kept the scale insect under control. The very first shipments back were almost laughably, dangerously small. At one crucial point, only 129 live beetles remained. And then, released into the groves, they did the one thing that mattered. They bred. Thousands of their offspring spread outward through the dying orange groves. In just 2 short years, the Vidalia had wiped out the scales statewide. The entire citrus industry was saved, without a single drop of chemical. Today, this is remembered as the very birth of biological control, an invading pest defeated completely by a tiny living weapon. Soon after, ladybugs began traveling right around the world. Dozens of countries imported them to fight aphids, scale, and other pests. The ladybug had become a global tool, effectively a living pesticide.
But a living weapon comes with one very serious, unavoidable problem. Once released, you simply cannot ever switch it back off again. And this is exactly where the ladybug story quietly turns dark. Because the perfect little soldier slowly became the perfect invader. Share this with someone who still believes ladybugs are completely harmless. What happened next would reshape whole ecosystems across 2 continents. It all began with a single species called Harmonia axyridis. The Asian harlequin ladybird was introduced, again, to control pests. It was bigger than the natives, hungrier, and far more aggressive. It bred faster than any of them. It was the perfect soldier. And, just like before, it very quickly slipped right out of control. Because it did not politely limit itself to eating only aphids. It began to devour the native ladybug's own eggs and young. It took their food, and then it took their living space. Across Europe, one native species after another simply collapsed. The 2-spot ladybug lost enormous numbers in only a few years. In some places, the old native beetle very nearly vanished for good. And the harlequin ladybird has one more deeply unsettling habit. In autumn, it gathers in swarms to find shelter for the winter. It chooses human houses, the walls, the window frames, the attics. And they pour inside, silently and steadily, by the thousand. They stain the surfaces they crawl across, and they smell distinctly foul.
They can even give a person's bare skin a small, surprising nip. They are harmless to us, but a mass invasion is still deeply unpleasant. We had built ourselves a precise tool against agricultural pests, and, almost inevitably, that very tool became a serious pest of its own. Biologists have a plain name for this pattern. They call it invasion risk. Harmonia axyridis is now one of the most famous examples on Earth. The gentle beetle we all loved quietly rewrote an entire continent. There is far more to this creature than its warning and its appetite. What we see as a red shell is not actually its wings at all. They are hard protective cases, guarding the real wings folded beneath. The true wings are thin, transparent, and several times longer than the body. When folded away, they follow a precise pattern, much like origami. The beetle can unfold and refold them in a tiny fraction of a second. Engineers now study that folding to design collapsible structures of their own, everything from compact umbrellas to unfolding satellite antennas in orbit. Its eyes are compound, like most insects, yet it sees surprisingly poorly. It finds its prey mostly by smell and touch, and hardly by sight at all. As autumn deepens, ladybugs gather together to survive the coming cold. From dozens to millions, they pack tightly into cracks and crevices. There they enter diapause, slowing right down and living on stored fat. Radar has actually tracked ladybugs flying more than 1 kilometer high. Caught in air currents, they can travel at nearly 60 kilometers an hour. For a beetle just 7 millimeters long, that is genuinely astonishing. So, what are ladybugs actually for? The honest answer is balance. The aphid breeds fast enough to bury an entire garden in green. Remove the ladybug, and the collapse cascades all the way down the food chain. The plants fall, and the insects and birds that depend on them follow. When we once sprayed pesticides everywhere, we killed the ladybugs too. The aphids came roaring back in weeks. The ladybugs needed long months. So today, farms breed ladybugs and release them across fields by the thousand. Where there are many ladybugs, you are looking at a healthy ecosystem. This tiny beetle is not a decoration on nature. It is a load-bearing pillar. If this changed how you see it, subscribe. Next time, we hunt the dragonfly.